Chapter 6 review, and one of the problems that you'll encounter on the test is percent of change. So the percent something has changed, and that formula is up here. You'll be able to see this on the test. You'll also be able to use a calculator. So let's take a look here. A set of trading cards sells for $8.95 before tax. After sales tax, it costs $9.60. So what happens is somebody goes to buy something, the price tag says $8.95 and the cashier asks for $9.60. What's the sales tax rate? Now, when you're looking for what was the tip or the tax rate, you want to use this formula here. We're finding the percent of change when we're determining those things. So we have X percent. We have to write it in percent equals the original amount. That's $8.95. And on top of that, the amount of change over that. So that's $8.95 to $9.60. Let's see, 5 more cents is 9. So then 60 more cents is $9.60. So 60 plus 5 is 9. It's 65. So 65 hundredths. So the sales tax is 65 hundredths divided by $8.95, and we can use a calculator for that. So I'm going to punch in 0.65 divided by 8.95, and I get a big decimal number here. So I get 0. And I have to write my answer in percent because it says percent of change, and tax rates displayed by percent. 7 hundredths to 6.2. So we have to convert this to a percent. I move the decimal place 2 places to the right because percent means already hundredths. So I don't need to have them behind the decimal point. So I move this over once, twice. I get point. Oops. I'm sorry. I move it over twice, and it's 7 and 0.262. It looks like my answer is all to the hundredth of a percent. So 7 and 26 hundredths of a percent is my answer. Remember, you can plug in this formula. Tax rate and tip are always expressed as a percent. So this is 7 and 2600%. Remember, decimal to percent with the decimal 2 places to the right because percent already means hundredth. Another one we're going to do is figuring simple interest. So the interest is the amount of money you made by having something in the bank. The principal is the amount invested or borrowed. The rate of interest is percent, or the charged or earned for having the money in there. If you borrow money, you have to pay an interest. And time is in years. What they don't tell you is balance. Balance means your principal plus all the money you've earned, or your principal minus money you've taken out. That's your balance. Your final total is the balance. So because they mentioned balance here, and that kind of confused many of us in class, Misty deposits $3,600 in a bank. Well, that's our principal. So our principal is $3,600. That pays 2% simple interest. That's our rate. It's the percent times, and I have to write it as a decimal in order to do the math here, 0.02. Remember, 2 to the left. 1, 2. We worked on that quite a bit. 2% is 1. It's 2 hundredths. It's the same as 2 hundredths. So some of you, when we were working on this, said, how do I write 2% as in decimals? And you just said 2 hundredths because I think you're thinking percent, and that's absolutely right. If she doesn't change the principal, means she doesn't withdraw any money, what will her balance be in 5 years? That's our time. Got a rate and our time. So we're just looking for our balance times 5. But they're asking for the balance, not the rate. So I'm going to use my calculator here. We have to be careful. We're going to get the interest earned. And remember, that's how much money made, either paid on the principal, how much the profit she made. Balance is the interest earned and the principal. Balance is both these things. So be careful because on the test, it's going to ask for balance. So I can just, with the calculator, it's quite easy. 3,600. I'm pressing times 2 hundredths times 5. and I get 360. So 360, but that's my interest. That's not my balance. I have to add that to 3,600. 360. So my balance is going to be $3,960. So that's going to be D. And I bet you see that on the test and know that the secret word is interest. All right, here's another one. How many years will it take? So we don't know the time for 8,000 to double at a simple interest rate of 6%. Interest. What's our interest? Well, 8,000 doubles. So how much interest did I make if 8,000 doubles? That's saying 8,000 two times. So the interest is going to be 8,000. If 8,000 doubles, how much? The principal's 8,000. For 8,000 to double, it means 8,000 plus 8,000, or 8,000 two times. Times 6%. How do I write that as a decimal? 2 to the left. 1. Add a 0. 2. 0.06 times T. Okay, you can use a calculator too. So I'm going to times 8,000 times 600ths. Okay, I get 480 T. 480 times the time. That's going to equal 8,000. And using these formulas, I need to isolate the T, get it all by itself. So how do I isolate it? How do I undo the multiplication? I divide. I divide by 480, and I get T all by itself. T. If I divide this side of the equation by 480, I also have to divide this side by 480. So you can use a calculator on tests. And I get 16.6 years. It's actually 16.666666 years. So 16.6 years will double your money. That's pretty good. Good way to make money. Just leave it in the bank. Let's look at another one. Greg needs to find 87% of 400. Estimate the number. Well, let's see here. 87% is real close to 90% of 400. Convert it to a, and I could probably do this in my head, 400 times, and write this as a decimal, 12.9. And I get 36, add those two zeros, and one digit is behind the decimal point, so I get 360. You could probably do that in your head, and 90%, 9 times 400, 360. And 360 is really close to 400, 90%. 24% of 300. So 300 of means times 0.24. You can work this out, or I'm just going to use a calculator, and you can too. Yeah, 72. Does that make sense? 24%. It's close to 25. That would be 5. Yeah, it makes pretty darn good sense. So. Okay, the sales tax in New York City is 8.25%, or 8.25%. Okay, but how much will an $83.99 jacket cost, including tax? So let's see here. So we could kind of round this up to 90. I think that's acceptable. $90. That's like close to 10%. So times, so $90. I don't need those there. $90 point times 10%. I can write that as 0.1. So it'd be that $90. So it'd be about like $99. It's gonna be less than that, but you know, just a rough estimate. Let's move on. You'll have to do some estimating, and if you don't get a number this close, just pick the closest one. Your number might be slightly different when you're estimating. There's many different ways to estimate. Okay, could have said 80 times 9. That might have been more appropriate. So 80, 88, I think that's appropriate. Actually, that's probably a closer, better answer. Round this down to 80. No hard and fast rules on that, though. What is the percentage of change if 30 is decreased to 25? So what's the percent of change? The amount of change, 25 to 30, is 5. And the original amount is 30. It's the starting one. Nothing's happened to 30. It's decreased to 25, which makes 30 the original amount. So, see, 5 divided by 30. I get 0.666. Move it over to the right. 16.6%. And that's 0.6 is repeating, so that's 16%. Just follow the formula, percent of change, amount of change over the original amount. And there we go. If you can do these, you're going to do great on the test. So study your study guides. A couple of these are actually on the test. It's like I told you, and interest is the secret word. Good luck, guys.